Hey, and welcome back to Game Talk. I'm your host, Ahmed Mion. Today I'm joined by Connor
Hey guys.
and Mike.
Hello.
And before we jump into today's topic, I just kind of wanted to give a quick update. Last episode, we predicted that E3 would be canceled within a week or so, and I gotta say we were kind of spot on. E3, along with pretty much any other event under the sun, has been canceled due to coronavirus. And yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, it's kind of trippy. I don't really want to spend another week talking about it, but yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the very next day too, wasn't it?
It was
pretty
very close.
Yeah. Yeah, scary
It may
times.
have been canceled before we put the episode up.
But,
Spoiler, we record these like a week in advance.
Yeah. But on a slightly brighter note, what I want to talk about today is our top 5 hardest games we've personally completed. And I was thinking we could do this in a similar format to our previous ranking episode, the one where we ranked the top 5 games of the decade. And especially because we often talk about like difficulty in gaming on this podcast, I feel like it'd be a good list for us to go through. So who wants to start off?
I'll start off if that's all right with you guys.
Sure.
You're gonna notice the theme in mine. There's a lot of platformers on there, but I think I'm gonna open up with Super Meat Boy.
Oh geez, yeah. A lot of people
yeah.
call that the hardest game ever, straight up.
I don't know about that, but it's incredibly difficult. You see, I don't want to call it the hardest game ever because I did beat it, and I don't consider myself a good enough gamer to beat the hardest game ever.
See, but that's the thing, though. I think with a lot of these games, especially if they're not like competitively focused, I think enough time and effort.
Yeah,
like,
that's
anyone
the
can
thing.
beat these games. I think it's just
That's
a
the
matter of
thing
like
about-
putting in the time and the learning curve and all of that.
That's the thing about this list. Like, Super Meat Boy doesn't seem hard to me looking back because, like, you don't remember losing a billion times. You just remember finally beating it and that euphoria you feel. So
Right.
And I feel like if I went back now, like, I could breeze through most of it because I just, had to get good. But yeah, it's a Super Meat Boy for the uninitiated. I feel like we should probably do that. It's a game where it's basically like the simplest platformer you can imagine. You play as a little guy called Meat Boy, and he's trying to save his girlfriend Bandage Girl from Dr. Fetus. Then you just jump through these like buzzsaw infested levels, and it's just really, really intense, hard platforming. But the levels are fairly short, and usually, you die, a couple hundred times a level, and then get to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, I dabbled with it a little bit on Vita, and it was not long before I just noped out of it because I don't know. I can handle like difficulty in combat and shooters and stuff like that, but platforming, for some reason, platforming just gets to me. And we've talked about like Hollow Knight's like Path of Pain before, and I just could not do it. Like I banged my head against that thing for a good chunk of time, and I was just getting way too frustrated.
I think my entire list might be platformers. Spoiler alert. Just because, like, I don't know, I'm really drawn to difficulty in that genre. Like, there's so many platformers, and I feel like when somebody's trying to make a crushingly hard game, it's gonna be either a Souls-like or a platformer.
Yeah, that does seem to be like the main paradigm for difficulty nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I can go next, I guess. So, like Connor, mine also follows a certain theme, but my list is probably a lot more predictable than Connor's and much less exciting. My first game is Bloodborne. Now, I wanted to put Dark Souls on this list, but I didn't. Because Dark Souls, while being extremely difficult, especially for being the first of what it was, I definitely think that in a vacuum, Dark Souls was one of the easier Souls games. And Bloodborne, especially for me, I think the reason it was so difficult was because it took away Dark Souls' I guess, biggest crutch if you're having difficulty, in which Dark Souls, you could just block attacks. Yes, it would deplete your stamina, but you could still be offered like pretty much guaranteed protection just by holding the left trigger or left bumper. In Bloodborne, there is no blocking. You either you get hit or dodge. It's very kinetic. It's very fast-paced and reaction-based, and if you mess up, you get punished for it. But it's fair because it's all based off of your reactions and how you respond to the enemy movements and stuff like that. So that's why Bloodborne's on my list. I think over Dark Souls, at least, because they took away the block mechanic. I found it more difficult than Dark Souls.
See, I think I am not far enough into Bloodborne to agree or disagree, and it's the Souls-like games are really hard to gauge because like your first one is always going to be the hardest one. Like
Yeah,
after playing, even though the mechanics are very different, like block-wise, if you've played Dark Souls, like Bloodborne is going to come easier to you than if
it
you
will.
haven't.
It will. But I do think that there's something to be said about them removing the block button. And
Yeah,
I
oh yeah,
think
I agree.
in a vacuum that makes Bloodborne harder than Dark Souls. But I can't imagine many people,
Yeah,
played
you see,
Bloodborne before Dark Souls.
yeah. But I also think, in my opinion, Dark Souls 1 is the hardest of the Souls trilogy.
Of the trilogy, yeah, I'd probably
Yeah,
agree.
I think Dark Souls 2 is a pushover, and then Dark Souls 3 was kind of close to Dark Souls 1, but it had a little bit of stuff in there that made it a touch easier.
Yeah.
Some of the bosses were harder, but like overall, I think Dark Souls 1 was way harder than 3.
Yeah,
Just my 2 cents.
I agree.
I
All
haven't
right.
finished Bloodborne, so I can't really say how hard it is yet.
Well, yeah, where are you in Bloodborne, just by the way?
Uh, I'm hitting a bunch of dead ends. I just killed the Blood-Starved Beast, which was an optional boss, I think.
Yeah, that one's pretty intense. I
You
remember.
see, I thought it was a pushover. I thought it was really easy,
Oh,
but
really? Yeah, I
yeah.
thought it was
After
pretty difficult.
no, the only difficulty I've run into in Bloodborne so far is not knowing where to go, which is frustrating, but not like it's not killing me. I'm just frustrated with it.
Yeah, Mike.
So I'm gonna go off the wall, and these are in no particular order because I can't order things worth it. But Natural Selection 2 was probably one of the more difficult competitive games I've played.
What do you do in natural selection too?
Well, where the difficulty comes from is not in the Marine side, which is your standard shooter, and it's very run of the mill, but playing on the alien side, where all of a sudden you are locked in a first person view in the mouth of an alien. There's a lot of mechanical depth there. You have to learn how to bunny hop, you have to learn how to climb walls, how to not get disoriented, how to dodge bullets. That's only the starter class. There's more. You have to learn how to ambush, build,
I think it's super
command.
interesting that you picked a competitive game.
Yeah. Well, most of mine are going to be competitive games since that's a lot of what I play.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that's really interesting because I feel like competitive games they're difficult for a wholly separate reason, because you you're actually obviously competing against other people and learning the meta and evolving and changing how you play the game the more you play it.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
to this day, everyone in the Natural Selection 2 community says you are completely new to the game until you hit your first 100 hours.
Wow,
That's the barrier to entry.
that is a tall barrier.
Because the alien side is 5 or 6 unique classes that all play completely different from one another. Well, the Marine side is just your standard FPS with flamethrowers and rifles. And then there's the commander who literally sits there and tells the sides what to do because it's an RTS hybrid.
Sounds pretty complex. Connor, what's the next game on your list?
It's funny you mentioned Hollow Knight earlier. Ordinarily, Hollow Knight, like the base game, would not make my list. Even including the Path of Pain, I don't think. But the combination of the Path of Pain and the Pantheon of the Gods, or the Pantheon of Hallownest, I forget which one it is, where you have to fight.
The Bosch Rush?
Yeah, every single boss in the game, plus 2 new ones that you've never seen before, all in a row without dying.
Yeah, that's absolutely brutal.
I have not beaten it yet, but
I don't even think I
keywords
want
yet.
to attempt this.
It's
Just
very,
sounds
very
painful.
hard. Yeah.
And I would consider myself a masochist for how I play, like Souls games and stuff like that. But even I would not go that far.
The best part is they locked an ending behind it. They locked 2 endings behind it, actually.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially, yeah, I really agree with you. I would even go as far as to say that Path of Pain makes Hollow Knight. If you include that with the whole package, and it ups the difficulty significantly.
Yeah, and I really like how Hollow Knight does difficulty. Because you really get to choose your own. Like, if you're having trouble with the combat, you can use charms that make that easier, but like you might lose the marker that shows you where you are on the map. Like I love that kind of
Yeah.
like customization that they give you, and they make it all like make sense in the world too, so it doesn't feel like a difficulty selection. But it's not just the Pantheon of Hallownest either. Like the Grim Troop, Nightmare King
Oh
Grim,
yeah.
that took me all weekend to beat. That was very difficult.
Yeah, Hollow Knight as a whole is not, it's not an easy game, but its
No,
difficulty spikes are some of the hardest spikes I've seen in gaming.
no, yeah, some of the optional bosses and stuff are just absurd.
Yeah.
I love it though. I can't wait for Silk Song. I can't wait to throw myself back into that meat grinder.
Yeah, same. All right.
That's yeah. You
Yeah,
go up again?
I'll go next. Uh okay, so the next game on my top 5 list is Uncharted Drake's Fortune on crushing difficulty. So, I don't know if you guys have ever played the Uncharted games on crushing, but they are pretty brutal. You just die in a couple of shots, and especially Uncharted 1 when the shooting was janky and the enemies were just Uncharted 1 was essentially just facing wave after wave of enemies. And
Yeah, and
on crushing difficulty, that really kind of broke my brain. It was very, very frustrating doing this on crushing, but granted, this was several years ago, so I might be misremembering the difficulty, but I remember distinctly how frustrated I was trying to get through that game on crushing.
yeah, I have like some beef with the using that one though, kind of like because like when you have a difficulty selector to me, like our previous selections and stuff, those are hard games, but I feel like Crushing and Uncharted is just stupid hard. Like it's difficulty for the sake of it, and it's not fun for me anymore.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't fun. I just did it to get the platinum trophy.
Oh my God.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it was brutal. And yeah, I have one other game on here that uses that difficulty selection,
Yeah.
and I think you're right. I definitely sort of prefer the games that have the difficulty baked in inherently to the design. But there is something to be said about like how hard can we make this one thing, whether it's fair or not.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah,
that's kind of
there
what I'm
is.
exploring.
And it's weird, right? Because like I don't know. That's a whole nother topic. Is difficulty selection in games? Because like
Pretty
I
sure we actually
never.
did that way back.
Oh really? Because I never play hard in games. I'm a normal kind of guy. Like a game being really hard is attractive to me. But if I have a difficulty selector, I'm never gonna choose the hardest option. I just never do.
Most of the times I would agree. I almost always pick normal, but like in the rare cases where the developer comes out and says, "Hey, hard is the intended difficulty mode." Like they did that for God of War, the PlayStation 4 game. They came out and said, "Hey, the intended mode the developers want is hard." But, the game starts out default on normal. You have to change it.
Yeah, yeah. I think in that case, I would do the same thing. I would
Yeah,
play
the
hard.
only other game I can think of in recent memory that I started on hard intentionally was Jedi Fallen Order. But I think that was because I wanted that game to be more Souls-like in its difficulty.
Yeah.
And I started it that way, and I definitely don't regret that. That made that game way more rewarding to play to me.
I still need to check that out.
Yeah, it's if you like Star Wars and like Souls-like, it's a great game. But anyways, okay, Mike, what's your second selection?
So my second selection is not a competitive game this time. I'm saving those for later. Into the Breach. I
Okay,
actually
yeah.
felt a lot really challenged by that tile-based strategy that it kind of threw at me. There was so much thinking to actually beat a game, just beat one run, and so many failed attempts that it was actually really satisfying to finally win. And I still haven't won like a 3-star run through, which means I haven't cleared all the islands in one playthrough, which is unfortunate, but
So Into the Breach is
It's a strategy game.
it's a strategy
uh
game.
but isn't it like procedurally generated or roguelike?
Procedure generated roguelike, and you can when you restart a run, you can take one pilot from your previous run forward
Right.
into your next run. Meaning I've had a pilot who's been there since the beginning who I've just kept rolling through. And miraculously, they haven't died yet, which is astounding because usually they just die. It's very easy for things to die.
Yeah, you actually talked about Into the Breach as the game you were playing one time in the past, and
Yeah.
it encouraged me. I have it. I haven't played it yet, but
Yeah, I've been meaning to play that one for a long time.
I have trouble getting into strategy games, if I'm being honest. It's I have to really be in a mood for it.
It's very much like FCL in its nature.
Yeah, it's
Right.
made by the same guys, right?
Yeah. And it has Ben Prunty doing music, so it's very, very similar.
So would you say Into the Breach is more difficult than FTL?
No, FTL is still really difficult. Into the Breach, you have a lot more options, and it's less punishing via RNG.
And you also have
This-
time to think in Into the
yeah.
Breach, right? Like
Yeah, you have a lot of time to
FTL
think.
Or you can pause time in FTL, can't you?
Yes, Into the Breach, you have to go through and carefully think out your move, because if you make a move, the move's made. You have one rewind to rewind a move. So if you're not thinking, you're gonna have a rough time.
And
Yeah.
there's like variable levels of success in Into
Yeah.
the Breach, aren't there? Like you don't have to save all the buildings, right?
Yeah. You don't have to save all the buildings, but it's recommended because you'll have a better time on that island.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I have played Into the Breach. I just realized I got it on Switch a while back. So this is the one with like the aliens, right?
Yes.
Like the alien buildings.
Yeah, what do you
and stuff.
think we were talking about?
Yeah, for some reason I don't know. Yeah, I just
Hopefully
had a
not
brain fart
Breach,
there.
'cause that game was terrible.
Right, but no, Into the Breach, yeah, I definitely echo your statements. It's very difficult. I played it for a good few hours, and didn't make it too far each time, but it's definitely a game where you learn with each loss.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and completing my first run was super satisfying, but God, was it difficult.
Yeah, and a big theme of that game is like sacrifices, right? You have to like
Yeah.
make calculations to like, okay, either way, I'm going to take a hit in my resources. Which one is worth more to me right now?
No, what squad I used was the Zenith Guard, who were really good at displacing and moving aliens around, and then using the chain whip attack. No, it wasn't Zenith Guard, it's Blitzkrieg. The Blitzkrieg has a chain whip attack that one of the mechs carries that chains between enemies, and the other two tanks all work to synergize with that by moving enemies around into lines.
Yeah, and
So
I really, that's another part of the game I really enjoyed, the sort of like positioning aspect of it.
my entire run was pushing this alien over here. Oh, it's going to attack this building. Let me dislocate it over to here. Or it's about to attack me. Let me move it one tile to the side.
Yeah.
Or let me make it swim. Things like that. Or even going with the sacrifice and using my grapple tank, which had a lot of health, as the start for a chain whip chain. Like I attacked the tank, so it changed to the aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, all sorts of creative solutions in that game.
Yeah.
All right. Connor, you want to go next?
Yeah. My next pick's another weird one, kinda. Dwarf Fortress.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh,
And
I was gonna throw that up there somewhere.
Yeah, Dwarf Fortress is a weird pick though, Mike. I'm sure you'll agree with me because a lot of the difficulty isn't fun. Like learning the menus and stuff. It has a really steep learning curve.
Oh yeah, the learning curve's entirely menus. Like there's no learning curve of the game itself. Once you understand the mechanics, you understand the mechanics. It's the menus.
But
The
also
menus
just
are your worst enemy.
but
there's-
just looking at it, right? It's not intuitive
Yeah.
like what is what.
Yeah.
You know, they're very it's very minimalistic.
But
So
that's
it-
not all the difficulty in the game, though. Like, I can look at it and tell what everything is now and everything. And, like, I can totally build a fort and it be fine and survive indefinitely. But that's not what you're supposed to
That's
do.
not fun.
Yeah, what you're supposed to do is, like, dig deep and, like, unleash monsters and stuff. Like, and that's still crushingly difficult. And, like, the littlest thing can go wrong and spiral your fort out of control. And
Yeah. And there's also like a roguelike element to this game as well, right?
right, yeah, the worlds are all procedurally generated.
They all have
Your
their own history
fortresses-
too.
Yeah, your fortress is getting destroyed, they're gone. You can't really do anything about it.
Mhm.
There's also a mode you can play where you play as an individual character, and it's kind of like a literal roguelike where you're walking around this world as an individual and just going on adventure. It's called Adventurer mode, and that is way harder than Fortress mode in my opinion. Like it's crushingly difficult because they really do. You're just like every other character pretty much. Like you can choose to have higher stats at the beginning, but even that's really not enough to save you if you're going to go fight monsters or whatever.
The weird thing about Dwarf Fortress as well is that it's very, very easily modifiable.
Oh yeah.
Like a 5-year-old could pick up and mod Dwarf Fortress. It's very intuitive with how its raws are set up and how everything's modifiable. Like for fun, I basically turned an entire race of elves into livestock just for the meme of it. Like that was a trip and a half.
Yeah.
I've done
Dwarf
crazy
Fortress
things.
is super fun for like the crazy stuff you can do in it, the projects you can build and stuff. But it takes a lot of imagination, and the learning curve is super steep.
Yeah.
But Dwarf Fortress would probably be the hardest game I've ever played if I had to pick one.
Oh yeah, it's up there for me as well.
Yeah.
Would the classifier a Minecraft for masochists be accurate?
Maybe. I don't love the Minecraft comparisons.
Yeah, I wouldn't compare it to Minecraft.
Because it's not really the creative side doesn't really do anything for me in Dwarf Fortress. It's much more about the survival side.
Yeah.
It's SimCity
that's
for
right here.
masochists, really.
Yeah, I would say that. It's definitely more SimCity than it
Like,
is.
It's an entire game where the main premise, the main goal, is to lose in the most spectacular and fun way possible.
Yeah, your goal really is to have a new story to tell on Reddit.
Yeah, really. Your goal is to go to work the next day and be like, so guess how my fortress died? Oh, I accidentally flooded the entire thing with lava while trying to kill a single dwarf.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because like you can't really beat Dwarf Fortress, right? You can only like prolong your inevitable demise.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can. I mean, you could theoretically prolong it forever. I mean, eventually, some people would consider it a win state. It's called FPS death. It's when you
I've been
have
there.
too many people or too many AI entities in your fortress and your frame rate drops so low that it's unplayable. And I guess you could technically consider that a win state because you're never going to lose at that point. But
Just rewinding really quick. Into the Breach has a win state, right, Mike?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I just never was good enough to get there. Okay.
yeah, I think
Back to
Dwarf
Dwarf
Fortress
Fortress.
is the only game we've talked about that doesn't have a win state so far.
And like, it's always interesting stories, like the story where me and a community fort and all of us in the thread discussed creating a race of super soldiers via exposing them to a mutagenic gas in a gas chamber. Like,
yeah, and Dwarf Fortress just keeps getting more complicated. Like
Yeah.
they're adding magic to it soon.
Oh, I wasn't aware that it was still being updated.
Oh,
no,
my god, yeah. No, Toadie's never gonna stop updating Dwarf Fortress.
Toadie is not gonna stop until he's dead or he's completed a simulation of a world. So
yeah, that's
whichever
likely.
one comes first.
So just wild thought, right? Like you said, the win state is kind of like, hey, I've succeeded so much. There are so many entities happening in my game right now that my computer can't handle it anymore, basically, right?
It's one of those situations where you pick your win state, really, much like Minecraft.
Well,
But
I was
yeah.
gonna say, like, what if you like start up Dwarf Fortress on like a massive server, like on AWS or something? Like just pay for like a really beefy EC2 instance and just have it on the cloud and just keep expanding as much as you can.
I don't know what the upper limits of Dwarf Fortress would be there.
Yeah.
I think it has a hard cap that's a soft cap that's adjustable of about 100 dwarves. You can raise that as much as you want.
I keep mine capped at about 110 because
Generally, what causes Dwarf Fortress's FPS death is not the dwarves,
it's cats.
but the animals. Yeah, the cats or the animals that won't stop reproducing. Like that used to be a major problem. Yeah,
That's funny.
no, there's a whole thing called the cat explosion where you'd have 2 cats and then like an hour later you'd have 100 and your FPS would just start dying.
Yeah, and the cats are good to have around because they kill small rodents and stuff, but you don't want them reproducing. I don't believe you can neuter or spay them.
You can. They actually added the ability to like neuter and spay.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Finally.
Yeah,
But
that's the other side of Dwarf Fortress is how deep that simulation goes.
yeah, no, it's like
I
there
mean,
are vampires who will go into your fort undercover, attack other dwarves. You won't realize this. Oh, you'll realize it, but the dwarves won't realize that there's a vampire. And so they'll gradually start fighting amongst each other.
and the
It's just
simulation runs deep enough, like you can have your blood boil inside your body in Dwarf
Yeah.
Fortress. Like
It's just wild to me hearing about this game without having actually played it, because every time I hear about it, like it just changes my perception of what it actually is. Like,
yeah, it's much less a game these days and far more like a simulation. It really is.
yeah,
Like Toady clearly is playing God at this point. He doesn't just want to create a world. He wants to create a tool that will build every world. That's very cool. Like they're adding origin stories soon. So like the magic in your world, the rules of it stem from the procedurally generated origin story.
wow,
So like your
That's
world
really
could be a
cool.
bunch of floating islands. Your world could be like normal. Your world could be round. Your world could be flat. Like
super
it's
interesting.
wild. Yeah, your world could exist inside the mind of a god or something, and everybody knows that potentially. Like,
That's just like that's got to be a lot of work, right? You're creating like all sorts like different mechanics for each of those eventualities.
see, what's really funny is Toady has talked about that, but in the same sentence talked about how difficult it was to get boats to work.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's really funny.
And the fact that one man has developed this entire thing
Oh yeah, that's insane.
is more impressive.
And it's free, right? Like he's
Yeah,
not
it's
making any
completely
money
free.
on this.
He's making money through donations because the community is very generous.
And they're
they
releasing a version on Steam soon, but the free version's not going away.
Wow.
The Steam version is supposed to have a better UI and actually have like a tile set built into it, so you're not looking at ASCII the whole time.
but I
Maybe
like
then-
looking at ASCII.
Maybe then a casual like me can get sucked into it.
Yeah, I'll definitely stick with ASCII myself.
Yeah, no,
You can't unlearn it, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
T means tree, and that's not going anywhere.
Sometimes T might not mean tree. T
Yeah,
might
it could
mean
also
Titan.
mean. Yeah, it might mean Titan. If it's moving, it's not a tree.
Yeah, if the trees are moving, you better be worried.
It
Okay.
usually means kobold, but sometimes not.
All right. Moving on. My next game is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. So another From game. And this one is drastically different from every other game From made in that it takes away all of the, weapon customizability and all the different systems like magic and stuff, and really sort of hones in and dives deep into one mechanic. You only have a sword in that game, and the entire game was built around, I think they said the entire game was designed around the idea of two samurai clashing swords. So that is the main premise of the game. So the combat is completely constructed around elaborate samurai sword fighting. And it's all about the dodges and parrying in this game. And I think it is more difficult than Bloodborne because the combat in this game is absolutely brutal. Like if your reaction time is even like a fourth of the second off, you're gonna get hit with that attack that you would have parried otherwise and just get cut to death. And I've experienced like a weird sort of zen state with this game sometimes when I play it, where if I'm really into it, I just somehow enter this trance where I'm like parrying everything and just reacting perfectly the way I need to. And it's almost it's like, and this game, like, I'm not saying like I'm special for doing that. I think this game like teaches you to enter that state, and I think it teaches you to almost play it instinctually, which I think is really impressive. And I definitely want to say too that the last boss in that game is probably the most difficult last boss of any video game I've fought. Like, it is it is a comprehensive test of everything that game has taught you. And when you beat it, you can truly say you've mastered the combat in Sekiro.
That's funny because From never likes to put the most difficult boss last.
Oh,
Like
they totally did for Sekiro.
that's so out of character for them. That's interesting.
Yeah. So what's funny is like the last boss. I mean, I'm not really gonna spoil anything. I'm gonna speak in vague terms in case you guys want to play it. But like the last boss starts out with you fighting one of the previous bosses first. And here's the thing, that boss, when you fought him at that point in the game, was extremely tough. But at this point, he's literally just the prelude to the final boss. So you quickly dismantle him, and then you actually get to fight the final boss. And yeah, the final boss is a sheer test of will. It has like 3 phases, and it tests your parrying timing and your dodging skill, and it just really pushes you to the brink as a player. And I really respect From for designing such an incredible boss fight. And of course, Sekiro has the trademark, From Software level design as well, which I really enjoy. Except it has more verticality to it now because you have a grappling hook. So not only is the horizontal world design labyrinthine, the vertical world design is as well. And I think the world design in concert with the unique and deep combat system that From made makes Sekiro one of the most incredible games they've ever made.
Yeah, I'm really excited to play it because it looks way harder than Souls games to me, and way harder than Bloodborne even.
Yeah,
The combat just seems
I would
so much.
rank it probably the hardest game From has made.
Yeah, and is that including Mech Warrior?
I've not played Mech Warrior.
They're good games, but is it Mech Warrior that they made?
No, they made Armored Core.
Armored Core is what I'm thinking of. Those are good games. I knew I'd played the one FromSoft had made. I just couldn't remember what the title was.
They also made The Adventure of Cookie and Cream.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cookie and cream.
Yeah, I really want to play Sekiro. I watched one of my friends. I think I've actually seen the final boss, which kind of sucks. I don't like spoilers very much, but it's terrifying. And like, I've played Souls games, and like, that's like breathing air to me now. But like watching Sekiro, like I just didn't really. It just like.
It seems impossible when you watch it. But
Yeah.
it sounds corny, but like you really, the more you play it, the more it teaches you, the more you enter that trance-like state where
it
you
looks
just
like you have to mentally go into bullet time to play that game.
it really is. Like you enter, like especially for that last boss, if your focus slips for even a second, you're finished.
Mm.
And yeah, I think I have a recording of me playing that last boss. And it's just super intense. Like even watching it, I clench my fists. And like I recorded the audio off that too because I was in like a PlayStation party or something, and I just straight up yell at the top of my lungs, like when I beat him. And like I wasn't planning it or anything. It was like a guttural reaction.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah, that's a special moment. Not a lot of games can give you that.
All right, Mike.
Oh, we're on number 3, aren't we? All right. Okay. Number 3. Ooh, this is a hard one. 3 out of 5. I'd have to say, honestly, Devil Daggers was really hard. If you haven't played it.
Can you give like a little synopsis?
So, Devil Daggers is very simplistic for an indie game. You have one platform, you have 2 attacks, and your goal is basically to survive. And the game starts throwing just enemy after enemy after enemy at you, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and eventually your entire screen's full of enemies.
So the idea is you only have like a small space in which to maneuver.
Yeah.
And you have to like dodge and kill your way to victory. Is there even a win state?
There's not a win state.
It's just how long you can survive?
It's how long you can survive.
Yeah.
So I think the win state is the single achievement, which is Devil Dagger, which I believe, which only 0.1% of players have. Out of all the people who play, only 0.1 have survived long enough to get the Devil Dagger achievement.
And what do you have to do to get it?
I think it's 500 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
that's not
that's
a
5
terribly
minutes.
long time.
Yeah, it doesn't sound
wild.
like it's bad. It might be 120 though. I don't know. Hold on. Let me actually Google it.
500 seconds is not 5 minutes.
300 seconds is 5 minutes.
Yeah. So it'd be considerably more than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. I'm looking up the achievement.
It's closer to like 8 minutes, I think.
In 2016, only one person unlocked it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 500 seconds.
Okay, so that's a little over 8 minutes, right?
A little over 8 minutes you have to survive.
Wow.
That's it.
And only one person had done it in 2016?
Yeah.
When did the game come out?
The game came out, I think 2016.
Oh,
Still 0.1% have gotten it.
Yeah, that's not very many.
I'm literally going to launch it and check the leaderboards. I got to install it first. Oh no. It's 500 megabytes. I don't think I can do that.
Unrelated,
We'll save that for later.
but apparently data caps are going away during this coronavirus thing. At least Comcast
Yeah, it's
is
almost as
saying
if they're nonsense.
yeah,
It's
almost as
like
if they're
stupid.
completely arbitrary and don't need to be there.
Don't even get me started.
Yeah, I think like the 500 is the community benchmark. Like people have gone 1,000 now, but watching a run through of Devil Daggers up to 1,000, it's nuts because it just starts becoming this sea of trippy enemy visuals that just don't stop. Because
Yeah, and I
God,
don't-
it's difficult.
I can't even. Is there like a luck component involved too? Like,
No, it's all the same spawns every time.
oh really? Wow.
Yeah.
So that means like people just haven't gotten good enough. That's crazy.
Number one is only 1,000, just over 1,000 seconds. 1,121 seconds.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's top time in the world. My top time, 27 seconds. It's an intense 27 seconds, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Jeez.
Didn't even know this game existed. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it.
yeah, it is one of those games that's just obscure but incredibly difficult.
Yeah. All right, Connor, what's your next game?
Spelunky.
Of course. Yeah.
I think most people have played Spelunky. It's a pretty big game. But it is just, I mean, I've never beat it, and I've been playing it since like 2015. Like,
Another roguelike procedurally generated game.
yeah,
Seem to be seeing a lot of those.
Spelunky, the difficulty of Spelunky is interesting because you can't memorize anything. Like, you really just have to learn the mechanics, like, really, really deeply. And there are runs. There's a secret ending in Spelunky that I'm not going to spoil it for people, but it's incredibly hard to get. And then there's a second secret ending called the eggplant run that's even harder. And like, I can't even imagine doing an eggplant run. Like, it just blows my mind that people can do it. And it's just just playing Spelunky normally, like, I can consistently get to the ice mines, and I die in the ice mines usually. I've made it to the temple a handful of times, but I don't think I've ever cleared a floor in the temple. It's just so hard.
Yeah, I've only lightly dabbled with Spelunky. I haven't really done a deep dive into it, but I consistently see that on people's lists for like some of the hardest games they've played.
Sorry, there was a bug in my apartment. Yeah, it's super. I don't know. Derek Yu is like I read his book. He's kind of a hero of mine. I love Spelunky. Can't get enough of it. Yeah, I don't know what else I could say about the difficulty in it. It's a tight. It was between that and Castlevania on this list because they kind of meet the same need for me. But Castlevania gets easy once you know it.
Right.
And Spelunky you can't know it.
Know it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I can fly through Castlevania like it's breathing air now. It's super easy. But Spelunky, I die in the mines, the very first area. I die there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You just slip up and stuff happens.
Yeah.
That's like the case on a lot of these difficult games. It's kind of contrary. I'm going on a tangent here. It's kind of contrary to the old days of difficulty where the game conspired against you. Now it's you conspiring against yourself and making these slip ups.
And I also think like the randomize element definitely has a role to play here.
Yeah.
Because like there's no familiarity. You know, you die and like you start in a new world. Like you're gonna have to learn that world.
Yeah.
So you always keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, it's difficulty has gone from the game being unforgiving to you knowing that you screwed up and the game tried ever so slightly to make you succeed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because like I always tell people who are intimidated by the Souls games that they're really not that difficult. What they do is they teach you how to play them so well, better than most games. That's
Yeah.
what they're really good at.
The dev wants you to succeed. The dev doesn't want you not to succeed. The dev wants you to succeed. It's a question of will you stick long enough to succeed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you look at Celeste. Celeste actually has these small little like bits where it'll actually help a player out. Like I saw a whole article on it.
Yeah, Celeste is an honorable mention for me.
Yeah.
That was another one,
Yeah.
along with Castlevania. I really wanted Celeste on my list, but it just doesn't beat out the ones that are actually there.
Mm.
I need to actually play Celeste. I think
It's
I
really
will.
good.
Yeah, I've played. I want to say like 75% of it, and it's fantastic.
If I had played like the B and C sides, Celeste would probably easily be on my list, but I just don't. I don't actually know how hard those are because I didn't touch them.
Yeah. All right, so the next game on my list is another kind of weird one. Call of Duty World at War: The Campaign on Veteran. Okay,
Really?
so I have played nearly every Call of Duty game, and I always beat the campaign on Veteran. That's kind of like a tradition for me almost. Like every November, I get the Call of Duty and play the campaign, and play like maybe 1 or 2 matches of multiplayer, and then never play it again. Which is probably different from how 99% of the people who play Call of Duty consume Call of Duty.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point. So the World at War, which was the follow-up to Modern Warfare, which came out, so like it came out what, like 2010 maybe, something like that. The campaign in this game was unfair. Like it was straight up unfair. Especially on veterans. So what happens is like you come across like a squad of enemies and you kill all of them, right? Well, no, because they infinitely respawn until you move on to the next checkpoint. But you can't move on to the next checkpoint because they'll just shoot you to death. So you kind of have to just run to the next checkpoint and hope you don't get shot, and then hope the game saves before you get shot. So you've made incremental progress. And not only that, like if you stay in one spot for longer than like 5 seconds, you get pelted by like 60 grenades. And
That doesn't sound fun.
it was one of the most frustrating gaming experiences I've ever had. And that's saying something, the fact that it's on this list and I played it like a decade ago at this point, and I still remember the pain I felt playing that game. By far the most difficult Call of Duty campaign, and easily one of the most difficult and frustrating experiences I've had playing a video game. It was so incredibly painful. But I did it. I beat it on Veteran. I can say that.
I'm proud of you. I would not have. I would have given up.
Yeah. I mean, if I had that game today, absolutely no way I could beat it. But, 10 years ago,
Yeah, you
I had nothing better
high
to do.
school time, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it really felt like luck that I beat it too. I remember distinctly in the last couple levels, I just had to make a break for it and hope I didn't get shot or blown up, and hope that the game saved a checkpoint, like over and over and over again. Jeez, it's making me mad just thinking about it.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
All right, who goes next, Mike?
Yeah, I'm next. So this is another weird one. Crusader Kings 2.
Yeah, I believe
Nice.
that.
It's not difficult mechanically, but again, it has the Dwarf Fortress problem where there's a whole lot of information thrown at you and not enough time to like think it through. You need to really get into each menu to figure out what it does.
I hear
Honestly,
it's like a lot like I hear it's like Civilization, but like way more in depth and hardcore.
oh
It's
my
very
god.
hardcore.
I've seen videos of people literally making, instead of a family tree, a family like twig. Just from like attempting to go as inclusive to their tree as possible. Like The game's nuts. It's so in depth, and they're actually working on a third iteration in the series after all these years because they realize they can't really get much out of the aging Crusader Kings game.
That's huge. I didn't know they were doing that.
Yeah, I mean the game came out in 2012, and it's now free to play. That's crazy. Wow.
Is it really? I thought,
Yeah.
because I considered buying it on Steam multiple times.
The base game is now free to play, but the DLC costs a good bit.
So, Mike, for someone who loves Civ like me, would I enjoy this game?
Oh yeah, no, you'd enjoy the entire Paradox games. Crusader Kings is the oldest one, and so it has a lot of the problems. But there's some essential DLC you need to buy. I checked their subreddit for the DLC you actually must have.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot you really don't need. Because every DLC changes the game drastically. So that playing the game with no DLC is an entirely different experience than playing the game with DLC.
Dang, okay.
Because Paradox is weird with their DLC strategy where they'll release about $200 worth of DLC for everything. That's including unit portraits and everything. But for the actual DLCs, it's about $124 worth of DLC.
That's still a lot to ask for DLC.
It's a lot of DLC. But it's also 8 years of DLC.
Okay, I wasn't aware that the game had been out that long.
Yeah, this game came out in 2012.
Also,
So it's
Ammon,
8 years old.
this may interest you, but I do believe there's a Game of Thrones mod.
There is a
for
Game of
Crusader
Thrones.
Kings too.
That interests me greatly.
Yeah.
I would like that very much. I've
Yeah, I've read some interesting things.
modded like games of Civ to be more like Game of Thrones, and it's kind of janky in Civ, but
I don't think it's janky in Crusader Kings. I've heard really good things about the
Crusader
modding
Kings,
scene for that game.
yeah.
yeah.
Mods for Paradox games are generally not jank because the game's set up really well for modding.
Yeah.
Like they give you a full toolkit to mod the game to your tastes. I'd give honorable mentions to all the rest of the Paradox games, but Crusader Kings kind of stands out because it's the oldest one, and therefore they really didn't figure it all out yet.
Hence all the DLC.
Stellaris, well, all of them have a lot of DLC. Like EU4 is gonna get a new DLC in like a couple months, and Stellaris
Oh, yeah, okay.
has a DLC coming out tomorrow.
EU4 was the game I was thinking of all this time when you were talking about Crusader Kings. Okay, that's the game I heard that was like Civ, but on steroids.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, EU4 is a little fun one. I'm probably gonna end up playing it after this podcast. I could just start playing it now, but it's very difficult. All of them are very difficult, except maybe Stellaris. Stellaris is very accessible, and they all connect to one another generally.
I didn't know that.
How's Stellaris connect to Crusader Kings?
You can transfer your saves. So there's something called the Mega Campaign where you start in Crusader Kings, you go to EU4 by transferring your save. You do this black magic to transport your save to Victoria 2, which is older than Crusader Kings, or about the same age as Crusader Kings, but didn't really get any development. And then you transfer from Victoria 2 to Hearts of Iron 4, and then Hearts of Iron 4 kind of finagle it to Stellaris.
That is buck wild.
That's over 1,000 years of game. In-game time.
That's wild, yeah.
That's just insane.
Yeah, it's wild. But I've seen people do it.
Wow.
And it's kind of cool to nurture a civilization from a little duchy in England to owning the entire world and owning
the entire galaxy.
Yeah. I mean, you won't own the entire galaxy. Stellaris is very, very kind of expansion afraid. Because you don't want to expand too fast and you don't want to expand too slow. And there's
Mike,
still
did you just
viability.
crack a cold one on our podcast?
It's a Coke, don't worry. No, I have this case of cherry vanilla Coke, or not cherry vanilla, orange vanilla Coke just lying next to me. And I was kind of thirsty.
Not gonna lie, that sounds kind of nasty, but
Oh, it's actually really good. I say as it hurts me as I drink it. No, I enjoy it. It's like an orange creamsicle, but a Coca-Cola.
Okay.
I
Anyways,
guess I'll wrap
Yeah.
up my list now. Number 5 for me. I gotta go classic Mega Man, and really at its core, Mega Man 1. Specifically your first playthrough, because these are games
Yeah.
you can learn, and learning them makes them much easier. But I to this day have never beat Mega Man 1 without save states. It's just ridiculously hard. Like, have you guys played them?
no, I haven't, but I'm aware of the difficulty.
Yeah, they're super fun, but like I remember and it's all the classic Mega Man games except 2 in my opinion. All the NES ones. I haven't played the ones after NES. But I just yeah, I remember as a kid I got Mega Man 9, which was a throwback that came out on the Wii. It was a throwback to the classic Mega Man games.
Yeah.
And you have these 8 robot masters you can pick from to fight first. And I thought something was wrong. Like, I thought the game was broken because I literally couldn't get past the first room in any level. Like, I was a kid, bear in mind, but like, I couldn't do it. And since then, Mega Man 2 is stupid easy. It doesn't really fit this category. But like Mega Man 1, I've beaten. I'm most of the way through Mega Man 3. I've played Mega Man X. I live for those games. They're super fun, but God, they're hard.
Yeah.
And later on they get kind of stupid with their difficulty, like giving you a limited number of continues and stuff. But like the core Mega Man games I'm talking about, Mega Man 1 through 6, super fair, unlimited continues. Like they want you to succeed, but they're not just going to let you do it,
Yeah.
And the levels are way harder than the bosses for the most part, because a lot of the bosses, if you have their weakness, you can like fly right through them. And like you can cheese the Yellow Devil, and I think the Yellow Devil's in quite a few old Mega Man games. But yeah, and I think even usually the final boss has a weakness. Like they give you the tools to make it a little easier on yourself. But like, there are people who do Buster only runs and stuff, and I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Like getting that first Robot Master is always the hardest part of a Mega Man game for me. Once I've done that, the rest is a lot smoother. But that
Right. It all
limited
snowballs. It all snowballs
Yeah.
from there, right? Because you get the next boss's weekend, then you get the next boss's weakness, and then the following
Yeah.
boss's weakness, and etc.
Although that is assuming you can figure out what they're weak against. I like to not look it up, but
Yeah.
not everybody is a
But
mask.
isn't it like? Doesn't it sort of make sense? Like the boss's
Usually.
weaknesses.
Usually, but for some reason in Mega Man 2, Metal Man has the best weapon in the game. He's an easy boss, and I think 4 other Robot Masters are weak to the metal saw that you can throw.
Okay.
And that's they kind of lost the plot with that one. Like Mega Man 2 is probably my favorite, but if I was gonna make a change to it, I would make it a little harder, probably. Like the metal saw needed nerfed. It has a ton of ammo, and you can use it constantly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't always make sense. Like the weaknesses, they try to, but sometimes it takes some out there thinking to figure it out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like what would you assume Quick Man is weak against? Like that one's not a name. Like yeah.
What is he weak against?
I want to say Crash Man, but I'm not sure. I don't know off the top of my head. Like that's just it. Like looking at that list of Robot Masters, I do not know.
Yeah.
I usually save the ones I'm not sure about until last, so that I can just shoot them with every gun and see which one works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, not much to say. It's super tight platforming. It's super, super challenging. And I think I saved it for last because it might be my favorite super difficult game to play. I love Mega Man.
Yeah, and I know like Mega Man's one of those games where like people learn that game like the back of their hands.
Oh yeah, no,
and
like,
they can make it look easy, but it definitely
like, Aaron Hansen from Game Grumps is like famous for being terrible at games, but he loves Mega Man and he just flies through them, and it's really weird to watch.
Yeah, no, there's people that are famous for being terrible at games, but when there's a game that you just know,
Yeah,
like I know Planet Side really well, but I'm terrible at some other games or Battlefield, and I just fly through those games because
yeah. With me, it's Sonic
sometimes you
Adventure
just get,
2
like-
and Castlevania.
Super good at it.
Sonic Adventure 2 is not a super hard game, but I can like get straight A's and everything really quick if people ask me.
I got like straight S's in Sonic Generations.
Yeah.
Honestly, a recent example of Mike, like the thing you were talking about getting really familiar, like Sekiro would be that for me, because I think I eventually came to like New Game plus 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 plus. I just beat that game. Like I got to the point where I beat that game within like an hour, hour and a half each time.
An hour and a half?
Yeah, like I got to the point where I could beat that game pretty instantly.
That's incredible. You see, I love games like that. I love a game that like is long the first time you play it and is like a super satisfying experience. But then once you know what you're doing, it's almost like a movie, like time wise.
Sekiro is exactly that. Like my first playthrough took like 30 plus hours, and then like I was beating it in like 2 hours or less.
Yeah, I love that because like that's Super Mario Bros. 3 for me. Like the first time I played through it, it was an all day event because it doesn't save. But now I can beat it in like under 20 minutes.
Yeah, really feels good knowing that you've got that mastery.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels good, and it's also nice. Like it's almost like, oh, I got a little bit of time today. I want to beat a game start to finish. Like that feels cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously the next logical step after that is speedrunning, but I don't think any of us are good enough here, except Mike. Mike.
Oh yeah, I've done some speedrunning. I'm trying to learn how to speedrun Hat in Time. It's actually a lot more difficult than Mass Effect 3 was.
Well,
yeah, I believe it.
Imagine.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot
honestly,
more room for error, I feel like.
Some of the tricks are super easy, like the boop clip. You just kind of have to figure it out, and once you figure it out, it's fairly easy. Like I had the game down patched and ready. I just need to like sit through the tutorial and run through it and get my first run through.
You should talk about that more in the what games I've been playing section because I want to hear it about Hat in Time speedrunning.
Oh, I don't have much to say about it. I tried to learn a clip that apparently I shouldn't have learned yet.
Oh, okay.
So I spent like 2 hours trying to learn it.
Get back to us in a few weeks then, when you've got it down.
Well, once you're the world record holder.
That's not going to happen.
Hey, you did it for Mass Effect.
Oh, I don't even have that world record anymore.
Well, you had.
Yeah, but that's the nature of speedrunning.
Yeah. Some Russian guy beat it in 12 hours. I don't even know who he was. He just popped out of nowhere, submitted the time, and then left our Discord.
Wow.
And I don't feel like running it again, so.
Yeah. Well, that's how those things go. All right, so my final game is Neo. So, on the surface level, like Neo is another Souls-like, but it is extremely different from the Souls games in a couple ways. One, it doesn't have like the world design that the Souls games have. It's very it's like Demon Souls in that it's like mission based. Like you select like an area to go to and play the level, and once you're done, that's the level, right? But the levels themselves have some decently good level design. They kind of like fold back into themselves, but not to the level I would say that Dark Souls does. But where Neo, I would argue, trumps Dark Souls, is the combat. And the melee combat in Neo is both brutally difficult and I think the most complex melee system I've seen in a video game. So just to break it down a little bit, there are several different like weapon archetypes, right? So like there's swords, dual swords, axes, and Neo, for those who don't know, is like a Japanese samurai based game. So all these weapons are like Japanese in flavor. So you have like tonfas and like an odachi, which is like a really long like two-handed sword. And so that's just to name a few of them. And the more you use a weapon, the more you increase your familiarity with it, and the more skills you can learn for the weapon. So each like weapon archetype has its own like skill tree, and the more you use it, the more you unlock on the skill tree, which sort of makes sense, right? Because you're becoming more familiar with that weapon. You can use it in new ways. But like where the combat really kind of explodes in terms of complexity is that each weapon can be held in one of three stances: a high stance, a mid stance, and a low stance. And each of those stances has a different fighting style and different upgradable skills as well. And not only do you have those stances, but the primary like energy system in this game is ki. As you attack, you expend ki. But the thing is, if you press the right bumper at the right time after an attack, you do what's called a ki pulse, and you replenish a good part of your ki. And a big part of the game is just sort of getting into the rhythm of like attacking and ki pulsing at the right time as you face your opponents. And the combat itself, like the actual fighting itself, is very Souls-like, but I would argue is less janky than Souls combat. It's way more refined and way more reaction-based than Souls combat. I guess, like, in terms of style, it lands somewhere between Souls and Sekiro in terms of, like, how it looks. But make no mistake, like, in terms of how much is going on, Neo has, Sekiro, Souls, all of those games beat. And just in terms of the things you need to think about and manage when you're fighting in that game. And
yeah, that sounds like a lot.
It's such a pleasure to play though. Like, and the enemies, so like I said, it's like samurai based. The enemies are all based off of like Japanese folklore, so they're all like variations on Japanese demons and stuff. And like it, I don't know, like it is absolutely probably, if I were to rank these games, I'd probably put Neo number one, honestly. Like,
really?
It was, I actually never completed the game. I played a good chunk of it, but I got sidetracked doing other things. And I do hear the more you play the game, it is possible to like outscale the game and just like get like all sorts of good loot and just keep leveling up until the game is trivial. But if you play it the way it's supposed to, it is an absolutely crushing challenge. And yeah, I really enjoy my time with it.
That's another one I haven't played. Yeah, yours are a lot of Souls likes in yours, huh?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like we all have different difficult games we like to play, which is really neat,
sure.
I think.
Yeah, that's kind of our dynamic on the podcast, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it could be boring if we all did the same thing. But.
Yep.
All right, Mike, why don't you round us off?
Rounding us off? All right. This one's a competitive game. I've saved the best for last. Dota 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that coming.
Yeah,
it was either League or Dota. It had to be.
That was a hard one to figure out. I'd put Dota over League strictly because of active items and the fact that League, I don't have to press an entirely new set of keys to use my items most of the time.
Yeah, and I do hear that Dota is more difficult than League, but having only played League, I can't,
they're both fairly difficult. I want to say that League has a little bit more mechanical, like, weirdness to it than Dota does. Dota also has turn rates on the characters, which means everyone turns differently. So if you're not facing the right direction, there's a chance that you won't hit that character you're trying to hit. You can kill your own characters. There's a lot of depth that League doesn't have there.
Wait, you can team kill in Dota?
There are a couple situations you can. Usually it's when they're on a damage over time that will kill them, guaranteed. That you can just attack click on them and they'll die.
God, if people were toxic before.
No, generally it's a good thing because the other team doesn't get the kill gold for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's beneficial to do. Unless you're 100% certain they will survive that dooming, just kill them. Like, just put them out of their misery because they're going to die from that tick anyway.
That's interesting.
But yeah, there's a character whose entire kit revolves around him suiciding. And it's very annoying.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. We've talked about all sorts of different games on this show, but like when you talk about difficulty with Dota and League, I feel like that's just several levels above everything we've been talking about, because like each character has that sort of depth to them, and it's a different depth. Like each character has so much things to learn about them and like how to use them in different situations and stuff.
Yeah,
it's actually like hard to wrap your head around how much there actually is to grasp in those games.
Since I haven't played Dota in a long time, I'm going to use my main on League as kind of evidence, because sure, the basic mechanics are the same throughout all the games. You still have to last hit. You still have to like think. But say if you're playing Kai'Sa in League, you have to think about your positioning. You have to think about your little attack range to see if you're able to hit Q. You got to think about when to throw your W at things, when to run away, when to fight, when not to fight, when to farm. There's just so much like levels of thought that have to be going on at all times,
Yeah, it's
and awareness.
overwhelming.
That's why I
Yeah.
can't play them. It's just too much. I've never been able to learn it.
Like you have to look at your map, you have to be aware, you have to make sure you can see, because vision's important. If you can't see something coming, then how are you gonna avoid
It
it?
would
Yeah.
be difficult to,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's,
Unless you're a god like Faker and just can react to it. But
I mean, even Faker can get ganked.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have, he can react to it because he has vision in that bush.
true.
No, once they're in your lane, there's no help. If you dodge while they're still in the bush, then they can't really do much because they'll just walk into lane, very sad. Like just most depressing walk into lane.
You just speak
But-
in another language to me right now.
No, I at least I can understand what Mike's saying. But yeah, it can be daunting to the uninitiated because it really is like its own world. you
Yeah.
know?
I am the
You have to-
uninitiated.
Yeah, you have to juggle your cooldown. There's so much just levels of depth in a MOBA. Even
Should
something
we-
like Smite, which, God, I can tear up Smite, but it's definitely not on the level of Dota or League.
I was gonna say, Connor, should we initiate you? Should that be one of the goals of the podcast?
We'll
That
initiate
could be,
Connor
we
to
could
Smite.
do an episode where we all get on and play a game of League of Legends. I would be down for that. And that's just the podcast that day.
Yeah. That'd be
Yeah.
interesting.
I'd be willing to do that.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put that on the docket.
Jesus.
Mike
Oh.
would have to coordinate things. He's obviously the most experienced one.
Yeah.
You're
And
saying
we
I'm
just have two
experienced.
poor suckers who are stuck with, who's.
I mean,
did
I'm
not-
at least familiar with mechanics of the game. You know absolutely nothing. So
I
The
know
game
that-
will make you play the tutorial, so
yeah, I know that R is your ult, right? I think
Yeah.
that's.
yeah.
I got that.
like the games are difficult, but the difficult's more in iteration rather than just throwing impossible things at you.
Actually, if it's all the same to you guys, I'd rather play Dota than League.
Okay, then both
I'd
of us
get
would
back
be
into
fish
Dota.
out of waters.
No, I have over 1,000 hours in Dota.
No, I'm saying Mike or Connor and I, because I've never played Dota. So
No, I'm real garbage at Dota though. I haven't played it in.
Dota just looks better
year.
to me.
Oh no,
I
it is. It's
it's
a very
prettier.
pretty game.
And if I'm gonna be sitting here fuming, I'd rather be looking at something pretty while I do it. And you know what? I'll even up the ante. I'll play it on my Steam controller.
I don't think that's
you're a
allowed.
monster.
No,
You're an absolute barbarian.
I'm not gonna do that. Okay.
So that has been it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Connor and Mike, for joining
oh my God,
me.
what did I just launch? Oh dear.
What did you do?
I don't know what I did. There's a game running. I didn't mean to launch a game on installing stuff for my Steam.
All right, so ignoring all of that, you can follow us at Podcast Game Talk on Twitter. You can join our Discord by clicking the link in the description of this podcast. Please like, rate, and review us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And apparently we're on Google Podcasts now, too. I just found that out. But
How did you
anyways,
not know this?
yeah, I don't know. But anyways, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.